Well, it's time now for what is on Rob's radar, and we are treading water today inside the virtual Gulf of Mexico, inside a brand new NBC2 animation. What I wanted to ask you today, have you ever wondered why fish aren't constantly electrocuted every time a lightning bolt strikes the Gulf of Mexico? I was thinking about that earlier, so here's the science behind what happens and what keeps fish safe every time there's storms over top of the water. Now, the surface of the Gulf of Mexico, or really any body of water, oftentimes becomes positively charged when there's a thunderstorm nearby. This is the same thing that happens at the surface of the Earth, and this positively charged area can become a nice home for a negatively charged lightning bolt. Now, I hear a rumble of thunder, so there must be a storm nearby, so I'm going to dive deep for safety, all right? But if I was treading water here on top of the surface of the water and there was a lightning strike nearby, even if it doesn't hit me directly, because I'm in the positively charged part of the water, I can still get electrocuted, even though I might not get directly hit by that bolt. So the next time you go to the beach, and certainly the next time you go swimming in the Gulf of Mexico, make sure you're paying close attention to the forecast, because you can be easily struck and, you don't want to be swimming with the fishes. As we rapidly move through the month of November, you might be getting curious about what's on the way for the upcoming winter, because here there's plenty of people like me who like to stay in shorts and sunglasses all winter long. But wait, there's plenty of people like me who enjoy the cooler weather and getting to wear jackets and sweaters from time to time. Whatever you prefer though, let's have a look at it with the 2022-2023 winter season outlook. And I'll get started, because if you like warm weather, well, things are working out in your favor big picture. The Climate Prediction Center shows that for winter, everything in orange here has a better odds of being above average temperature-wise through the upcoming season. It's thanks in part to something called La Nina in the Pacific Ocean. When this happens, the polar jet stream often stays well north of us. That means fewer storm systems, less severe weather, and warmer weather in South Florida. But this does not mean that we can't cool down at all. It just means that big picture, we have a better than normal chance of staying warmer than average. Pushes of cooler air will arrive, like we'll see on Thursday and Friday of this week. So, cold weather fans, we'll get our day. But warm weather fans, we're the ones who are going to end up happier this winter season.
Alter ego,
Yes,
Rob Dunn.
Thanks, Rob.
Hey, let's talk Winter Olympics for a moment. As you've been watching the games over the past week, have you noticed from time to time you'll see the athletes' breath when they're outside? But do you ever wonder why you're not seeing their breath constantly? After all, it's been cold enough to see your breath for the entire Winter Games. So to explain the science behind this, let's do some TV magic and shrink down really, really small so we can fit inside your lungs.
Where the whole process begins.
Hey, can you see me? Now that we're inside your lungs, the first thing you'll notice in here is that it's really warm and humid. Now, as you know, your lungs pull oxygen into your body, but there's also a lot of water vapor in here too. Now, when you exhale, you're not just exhaling carbon dioxide. You're also sending warm water vapor up out of your mouth and into the air around you. When that warm air combines with the cool air outside your body, that's what quickly condenses into this breath cloud that you sometimes see when you watch the Winter Olympics. Don't forget, though, that even though the air from your lungs doesn't change, the air all around us is constantly changing. Now, in a situation where it's cold enough, say 30 degrees outside, but the air is super dry with low humidity, you're unlikely to see much of your breath when you compete outside. On the other hand, though, if you have enough humidity, if it's relatively higher, well, in that case, when it's cold enough, you're much more likely to see the athlete's breath when they compete outside during the Winter Olympics. So it's thanks in part to both the temperature and the humidity why sometimes you can see the athlete's breath and other times you can't. Before we get to the forecast, something interesting for you this afternoon. Everybody knows the important role that Hurricane Hunter airplanes like this have during the summer and fall when it comes to tracking tropical storms and hurricanes over top of the ocean. But did you know these very same Hurricane Hunter airplanes are actually busy during the winter time too, like right now, helping to forecast developing winter storm systems in the United States and Canada? These planes basically have the same job, flying out over the ocean, giving us an idea as to how the atmosphere is expected to change over the next coming days. In fact, the hurricane hunters, they were busy last night flying from the northern Gulf Coast and out here across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, they spent a good chunk of the night last night between Bermuda and the Carolinas. The reason they spent so much time out here is because in the next 24 hours, this strong winter storm system is going to develop across the Atlantic Ocean and bring some bad wintry weather to parts of the Northeast. But for you and me, look to the west of the center of circulation. Look at all this wind that will have a northern connection. This is how it's even possible for such cold air to make it as far south as South Florida. And this is why it's possible we could be talking about some record cold temperatures this weekend.
The National Hurricane Center says 15 people were killed by the hurricane. That storm changed everything in Florida.
Seriously. A big change in the decades after Hurricane Andrew is how it impacted our building codes in basically all of Florida, but most especially the counties in South Florida. I have some demonstrations here that shows you some of the research that went into that. Now, in the late 1990s, research in former hurricanes showed that if you were to consider just a simple condo, which are all over South Florida, both coasts, if you had a Category 3 hurricane making landfall on the first floor, if you add 30 floors to the first floor, the winds can increase in some cases up to 20 miles an hour. That can put you a whole category higher on the Saffir-Simpson scale. So if you're on the first floor of a condo, you could be experiencing a Category 3 storm, but if your neighbor 30 stories up, which is very possible in Southwest Florida, we have a lot of condos that are taller than 30 stories. Those folks there are actually experiencing a Category 4 hurricane. Now, in case you haven't been to Miami in the last 30 years, looks a little different now than when Andrew was making landfall. Instead, we have something else to throw on top of the pile here. Instead of just having one or two skyscrapers like they did back in the early 90s, today you've got big skyscrapers that are all over the place. This presents a whole new slate of challenges for regulators and architects to figure out, because when wind hits a building, it doesn't just disappear. Instead, the wind picks up speed going upward and going downward. So in big cities like in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, you have a wind tunnel effect to these giant skyscrapers and condos, which can increase the speeds even faster. Unfortunately, in the years since Andrew, with the hurricanes that have hit Florida, I'm talking about Wilma, I'm talking about Irma, even though we have these beautiful brand new high-rise buildings, windows in the top floor of some of those big buildings, even as late as Irma, were still getting blown out during the construction process. By the way, the biggest building in Miami is now 85 stories tall.
Wow.
It's the tallest building in Florida. So this is something that we really have to come to terms with in Florida if we're going to keep building upward and experiencing the big hurricanes that we most certainly can and do.
That's why I prefer the ground floor.
Right.
Got to watch out for storm surge there, though, so you got to find a happy medium.
All right.
Maybe the third floor.
Right. Let's